faster than a speeding bullet, more powerful than a locomotive, able to leap tall buildings at a single bound. Look, up in the sky, it's a bird.
It's a plane.
It's Superman. Yes, it's Superman, strange visitor from another planet who came to Earth with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men.
Oh, shit. When you're young and you want to get into comics, there's plenty of places for you to start. But one of my favorite things about superhero universes, as it stands between the big two, is that there's alternate universes where characters have new origins or new stories, but they're still the characters we recognize and love. For Marvel, of course, there's the What Ifs, which, I don't know, pretty self-explanatory. And for DC, you get Elseworlds. This could range from plenty of things. This could be Wonder Woman tracking down and hunting Jack the Ripper. It could be Batman getting a Green Lantern ring. It could be a Green Lantern interpretation of 1001 Arabian Nights. It could even be Earth 1, which is trying to be a more realistic, grounded telling of these heroes if they were in our universe. Now, one of these has soared past everything else in terms of popularity. In fact, earlier this year, it got a DC animated adaptation, which went over pretty well. There's people of all political stripes who love it, and it's called Red Sun. Now, as a young liberal who thought he was a communist at the time and wanted to get into comics, this seemed like the perfect comic for me. Instead of landing in America, he lands in Ukraine, 1938. And instead of fighting for truth, justice, and the American way, he's fighting for Stalin, socialism, and the international expansion of the Warsaw Pact. Now, this is really a small change. He just lands in a different part of this blue sphere we're in. But it brings up a huge political question. For the 20th century, every single country on Earth had to grapple with this question of capitalism versus socialism. And how would this affect Superman, who is the quintessential American icon? Would Superman stay the same? How would the USSR do anything different? How would the USA react? How would have the USSR reacted in the original universe where it really wasn't brought up that much? With this mammoth of an idea, you'd have to have a writer who could do this with justice, who could do the nuance. He could paint every texture, every stripe of every character with...
So for me, that idea of a Russian Superman seemed quite a natural one. And there was lots of American superheroes. Why not create a Russian one?
Why not, indeed?
And I'll tell you right now, Mark Millar is not the fucking guy who should be writing this book, which is inherently a capitalism versus communism argument. Well, how do I know that? Mark Millar can't write politics for shit. For example, let's take one of Millar's most famous works, Marvel's Civil War, a book that tried to both sides the Patriot Act. Yep. In brief, Civil War starts off when a supervillain explodes at a school, leading the US government to push legislation which would require vigilantes and superheroes to register their identity with the US government. Iron Man is for this, Captain America is against this. Now, this video isn't about Civil War, so I'm not going to get into it, but I will point out the flaws with this. One, as a parallel to 9/11 and the Patriot Act, it makes no goddamn sense. Terrorists explode a building, so we better get every do-gooder and vigilante to register with the government so we can survey them 24/7 so they don't do anything like this in the future, which they didn't do in the first place. Yes, 9/11. Second of all, this argument is just anti-politics the comic, which isn't a very nuanced position. And if you want more detail on anti-politics, watch this Carlos Maza video. The whole point of the book is, do you work for the government, or do you remain free agents? That's what it's about. Does the government control superheroes or not? The government here? What kind of government? Every country on Earth, as it stands now, has a government. You're talking around an interesting idea, but you're not engaging with any of it. What kind of government would do this? Should any government do this? What kind of situations lead for a government to consider this? Is it right for a government to do this to people, even if it will assure safety? What kind of safety? When does it end? If they don't do this, what's the alternative? And if there's going to be no government, would it be anarchist? Would it be no state but still capitalist? Would it revert back to feudalism? The only response is no government. Okay. Now, like I said, this video isn't about Civil War. I just think it's indicative of the problems that are in Red Sun. And in fact, at the climax of Civil War, Captain America's army is winning the fight, and then Captain America gives up. When pressed why, he says they were winning everything except the argument. So instead of making a better argument, he gives up. Put a pin in it. Anyway, I'm not going to take low blows of Mark Millar. That's not really the focus of this video, and, you know, his character isn't really the question here. Okay, except this one thing. Mark wrote this comic called The Unfunnies, and it's the worst thing I've ever read in my fucking life. It's astonishing how bad it is. Its main premise is terrible. Everything about it is fucking horribly done. In fact, when he showed it to his wife, she got 6 pages in, threw it at him, said it was the most horrible thing she read, and his response was that Penguin is sucking a cock for a reason. He didn't even say it ironically. He said it like dead serious, like that was his explanation for it. And when that same interview where he brought that up, he said that it was the most ambitious thing that he's ever done in his life. And holy shit, Mark, they won't even bring it up now. Seriously, guys, it's like 4chan the comic. Alright, that's the last of the low blows for Mark Millar. Now to get on to Red Sun. And as per YouTube law, I have to recount the events of the comic before I put my critiques forward with it. So I'm going to do that now. Spoiler alert, I'm gonna ruin the whole comic for you. Issue 1. It's the early 50s, and as our comrade Soups narrates, the USA is waking up to discover that the Soviet Union has a secret super weapon. Famed journalist Lois Lane, Luther, look, it's Eisenhower looks to CIA agent Jimmy Olsen to see options for combating it, while the US populace starts seeing this new Superman everywhere they go. Jimmy knows just the man to solve their Superman problem, the most intelligent man in the world at Star Labs, Dr. Lex Luthor. Lex concocts a plan. They down the Sputnik 2 satellite over Metropolis, forcing the Superman to come out of the USSR to redirect it, saving millions, and showing that he's interested in the safety of every human. Superman has a birthday celebration in the Red Square hosted by Stalin. He meets our Wonder Woman, and we're introduced to the chief of the NKVD, Pyotr Roslov. Stalin dies, and after fighting with the US's Bizarro Superman, which kills hundreds of people in London, Lex puts his marriage to Lois on hold to focus on Superman, and a reluctant Superman takes charge of the USSR's government. Issue 2. It is now 1978. The USSR is run by Superman in an authoritarian nightmare, while it's said that the only 2 independent countries are the USA and Chile, which are both on the brink of fiscal and social collapse. Brainiac has shrunk Stalingrad like the in-canon Kryptonian city of Kandor, and Superman saves them from Luthor.
Well, that would require some sort of a rebigulator.
Soon after, an anarchist Batman bombs some buildings and escapes the KGB. Superman is disinterested in politics and prefers to help people alongside a USSR-aligned Wonder Woman. Batman kidnaps Pyotr, asking him to betray Superman, and even though he is the one who shot his parents in this timeline, he admits that a mortal would be better to have in power than Superman. Batman kidnaps Wonder Woman and beats up Superman. After a thrilling fight, Diana breaks out at great personal cost, and Batman martyrs himself rather than be brainwashed. Lex Luthor and JFK find a Green Lantern ship. Diana is left incapacitated, and Pyotr has been brainwashed. Issue 3. It is now approximately 2003, and Superman says that every adult had a job, every child had a hobby, and every human enjoyed 8 hours rest. Crime didn't exist, and accidents didn't even happen. The USA is a war zone post the Second U.S. Civil War and refuses aid from the USSR. In fact, Brainiac states that 350 million people are on the brink of starvation. Brainiac proposes an invasion, and Superman counters that global revolution has been bloodless so far, and he would like to keep it that way. Luthor is elected president and reunites the USA and fixes everything wrong in the country. He's cracked the code of the Green Lantern ring and outfitted an army led by Malaysian war veteran Hal Jordan to lead them against Superman. A jaded and neutral Themyscira is asked by Lois Lane to join the USA against the USSR when they attack in 24 hours. Brainiac informs Superman that Luthor has been planning an assault for 20 years and is about to attack, urging him to do a preemptive strike and save countless lives. Right then, as the Green Lanterns are preparing their assault, Luthor arrives at the Fortress of Solitude and tells Superman they are merely supplementary to his real plan. His real plan is to beat Superman in a war of words, kicking off a political debate so poignant and nuanced that every reader will challenge their preconceived notions of politics as Brainiac takes Luthor away before he can have his argument. He then convinces Superman that invading would be better than being invaded, so they go ahead. Superman and Brainiac beat the ever-loving piss out of everyone until Lois shows Supes a note that says, "Why don't you put the whole world in a bottle, Superman?" which leads Superman to a breakdown.
Why do you say things that you know will hurt me?
Turns out Luthor's alive, and Brainiac isn't as servile as we were led to believe. Brainiac's about to self-destruct, so Superman flies into space with him to save Earth. Luthor then breaks up the USSR. The Batman take over briefly, then everyone joins the global United States. Luthor uses ideas from Superman to lead Earth into a utopian paradise. Superman was alive, but undercover, and saw this all. Then turns out 3 billion years in the future, Luthor's distant descendant Jor-El sends his son Kal-El back in time to land in the Ukraine in 1938. So, that's Red Sun. As an adventure beat-em-up, it's pretty great. But as a political work, it's probably the worst I've ever seen.
What are you doing here, Superman?
Oh, come on. It would be a Pinko Punko video if I wasn't drinking something. I swear I'm not trying to rip off Sarah Zed. I get thirsty during these videos. So let's start at the base level of this book. What does Red Sun want to say? We could take the theses of this book from a conversation between Superman and Pyotr Roslov, head of the NKVD. Roslov presents the first legitimate criticisms of Superman in this book after Superman leaves his own birthday celebration to check in on Roslov and make sure that he's okay. Pyotr has two statements that form the main struggle of this story. How could they call you a symbol of everything we believe in when you aren't even from this planet? And you're the opposite of Marxist doctrine, Superman, living proof that all men are created equal. I will put aside the worthiness of these statements, and for now, I will just take for granted that, sure, they're true. These two thoughts form the crux of the argument of the book. Superman doesn't even go here, and he's naturally superior to everybody else, which disproves communism. In fact, actually, a couple pages later, after the death of Joseph Stalin, Superman addresses the crowd using one of these arguments that he's not fit to lead. But regardless, after Pyotr says these two things, he says them directly to Superman. So what is Superman's response? Well, he suggests that Pyotr's mad that Stalin didn't invite him to the party, and then says he didn't get the powers until he was 12. So he gaslights him and then, well, actuallys him? This is boring! This is the main ideological struggle within this capitalist versus communist story. And when our main character, the protagonist, has a chance to respond, he ignores it and then goes, yeah, I guess he's right, like a couple comic book pages later. I'm going to put aside the rest of the comic right now, and I'm going to focus on what Superman has done up until this point in the comic to make Pyotr distrust him so much. Superman has unveiled himself to the world, saved a young girl from a subway car hitting her, saved Metropolis from being flattened by a falling satellite downed by Lex Luthor, saved two people from the Daily Planet globe crushing them, left his own celebration to stop a chemical plant explosion, then left his celebration to help Pyotr. Which of these things has shown Superman to be incompatible with Marxism, or incapable because of his heritage? Now, Pyotr by no means is supposed to be a sympathetic character, and in fact, him having these qualms with Superman, showing off his inferiority complex, is pretty good character building. Just because you're next to the nicest and most capable man in the fucking universe doesn't mean that you're less worthy. That is a flaw, and it's okay to have it. But these two theses are the main arguments of the book. How can that critique come from anybody but a xenophobe? Superman has been the most selfless human in human history up until this point, and in fact, even after Pyotr is despairing and gets to shoot himself, Superman stops the bullet. He saves his life. This, if anything, proves the two theses wrong. Superman has been nothing but kind and a boon to, provably, the world. He was allowed to thrive under a system that didn't prioritize profit over everything else. Isn't that an argument for human nature? So the terms that this book sets are contradicted by the theses of the book, which the book could have made different. Nobody was forcing the book to contradict itself. Millar has this huge issue in which he can write lines of dialogue that are very profound and even provocative, but within the confines of the book that they're set in, the book's text doesn't prove them right or even really connect to them. Take, for example, the last issue. At the beginning of issue 3, Superman is looking over the world that he has essentially conquered, except for the USA and Chile. And what he says is that crime has been eliminated. Accidents didn't even happen. And nobody complained. Not even in private. People didn't even complain in private. So if we take the twin theses of this book at the beginning and apply it to this scenario, the only problems that we could have with this is that it's contradictory to what Millar states as Marxism, and that it's being done by a man who isn't from Earth, and that's the problem. There are other issues raised in this book. For example, when Lois goes to Paradise Island to talk with Diana, Diana talks about how Luthor is a madman, and everything he's done is only in service of defeating Superman. To which Lois responds, then the ends justify the means. But this philosophy that Lois raises is never once applied to Superman. Now, don't get me wrong, the things that Superman does in this book are undeniably human rights abuses. That's not up for debate. But so are things that the US does with Luthor. But this ends justify the means narrative is applied to Luthor, just not to Superman. The reality of life under Soviet Superman in this book is actually kind of nice. Every adult has a job, every child has a hobby, crime and accidents have been eliminated, everybody gets a good night's sleep. These are undeniably good things. There are problems you could have with this, and one of these is the argument against authoritarian regimes. So is this book an argument against authoritarian regimes? You are fucking annoying, you know that? Say hi to everybody. Alright. Oh. Sorry, the cat's in here now. Okay. So, Millar's contradictory theses don't really hold up, but that doesn't mean it's worthless. It's a story about authoritarianism and the overreach of government, like Civil War. Yeah, that's not completely worthless. Well, never mind the fact for a second that anti-politics propagates an intellectually bankrupt idea that doesn't really have any room for nuance. But the problem with the story that is anti-authoritarian is that Superman is shown to be defeated by authoritarianism. In this book's 2000 presidential election, Lex Luthor is elected the president of the USA. Immediately after, he dominates a strict internal market where he controls every dollar bill. This doubles the standard of living, and then doubles it again. So, authoritarianism is good? Except for the only reason that Luthor does this is to defeat Superman, and Superman's just doing it to achieve utopia. That's not to say that this contradiction isn't brought up in the book at all. In fact, it's touched on directly in a conversation between Lois and her sister Lucy. Lois laments that Superman might be a nut with a messiah complex, but aren't they in danger of replacing one demagogue with another? Lucy responds to this that it's possible, but at least Lex Luthor's a demagogue who speaks English. Yikes. Superman actually speaks English in this too. So putting aside the obvious xenophobia in that, that's like a good question. If they replace Superman, a demagogue, with Lex Luthor, a demagogue, is that going to be better? And will they have to worry about Lex Luthor doing the same thing? Remember Lex Luthor, the famous DC villain who in this very comic has been shown to shoot 3 people in the head in cold blood and say nothing about it? Nope. Lex Luthor wins 101% of the vote and leads the world into a golden age and nobody has to worry about it ever. Don't even worry about all that concern they raised about Superman. Lex Luthor doesn't have to worry about any of that. He's shown to be perfect for the world. After all, he's from here.
It's Superman, strange visitor from another planet who came to Earth with powers and abilities far beyond those of mortal men.
So let's return to the 2 main theses that I said at the beginning of this video, and we'll talk about them a little bit more. Sure, they're contradicted by the text of the story itself, but they're also bad by themselves. This comic rests on an anti-immigrant/refugee stance. This is a Superman story. I'll be blunt because it should be obvious, but the very essence of Superman is an immigrant and a refugee. He is sent here from a dying planet and adopts this place as his own and does everything within his power to fight and defend and protect it. And the book says that that is very bad. Now, some of you may be asking, how is this book anti-immigrant? That statement that Lucy says is shown to be misguided. Well, no, because she's proven right. Lex turns out to be the one to lead the world into a golden age where everything's great. And Superman was just a filthy outsider who didn't know how to do it right because he wasn't from here. Superman's parallel in this story is Brainiac, an alien who's come to Earth and shrunk a city to put under his complete and total control. And it turns out, it's not the fact that he's doing it under his complete total control. The problem is that he's not from here. So you shouldn't trust anyone who's not from here to do it. If there's one thing I want you to take away from this video, it's this. It's the indescribable rage I have against Mark Millar for taking the quintessential immigrant story about a man who was sent here from a dying world, adopted this place as his own, and uses every fiber of his being to make it better. He saves people every day. He destroys world-ending threats. He makes the lives of the people he saves even better. He makes the lives of his family and friends better. In his secret identity, which is supposed to be his reprieve from all this saving everybody, he's a reporter who exposes the lies that put people in danger. Everything he does is for the betterment of society, and Mark Millar says that that's bad because he's not from here. And that's the problem. Now, if this had just been totalitarianism is bad, that would have been a fine enough thesis. But the problem here is that everything in this book is underscored from, he's not from here, he shouldn't be in charge. This is actually the argument between this universe's Batman and Piotr in a cave. Wouldn't Batman rather have a human authoritarian monster than an alien one? The answer? A resounding yes. Even if that human would be 10 times as worse, by Batman's own admission. Now, I get that in the context of this story, this actually makes sense. If there's a near immortal god at the head of this authoritarian brainwashing regime that can do almost anything, wouldn't it be better to get rid of him and then just have a fallible human who could die in his place? But this clashes with the thesis of the story that says that he shouldn't be in charge just because he's not from here. And this boils over into, well, you know, he's justified. He's right. He shouldn't be in charge. He isn't from here. The most egregious part of this comes in the final pages of the 3rd issue. The global communist empire has fallen. The global United States takes its place, with Lex Luthor at the helm. Superman has been defeated. Brainiac has been destroyed. And Lex leafs through the books of Brainiac and Superman and says, hey, they had some good ideas. I'll use them. So guess what? Immigrants are okay, as long as they give their ideas to the right people, and then they fuck off.
We were in a socialist household, you know, and I think I was suddenly aware of America and Russia at a very young age, but at the same time, my parents were socialists.
What in the goddamn hell are you talking about?
Alright, we're finally getting to the other thesis here. The problem with this other thesis is that all men are created equal is not a Marxist ideal. In fact, all men are created equal is a very uniquely American phrase. It's in the Declaration of Independence, and it's pretty much an Enlightenment phrase. If you wanted to go along these lines and use an actual Marxist quote, you could use one like, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. But Millar can't have that thesis as his Marxist Superman, because then this USSR Superman would be the perfect Marxist hero. He has exceptional abilities, and he uses every waking moment to help people with needs. He has abilities helping people with needs. That's the fucking perfect Marxist hero. So why is it presented in this book like it's Marxist doctrine? Well, the vast majority of people in capitalist countries don't have that much interaction with Marxist texts. Yet. But I know one quasi-communist text that always appears in people's minds.
All animals are equal.
Now, I'm not going to get into Animal Farm here. That's a different video. Oh, Farmy. Everyone hates you but me. And I'm also not going to say that Mark Millar read Animal Farm and then said, yeah, I'm going to base this USSR Superman off of this book. What I am saying is that most people's cursory knowledge of communism goes, everyone the same, and read Animal Farm. That's right. I'm going to be charitable to Mark Millar and say that his research for this book wasn't Animal Farm. It was no research at all. In fact, the road to hell is paved with good intentions is a theme that also goes in this book, but I'm sure that's more of a coincidence than anything else. Regardless, I think it's quite clear that Mark Millar has no idea what communism is, he has no idea what socialism is, he doesn't know what Marxism-Leninism is, and he definitely doesn't know what anarchism is.
Anarchy in black.
I would say that's a pretty fucking big misstep for a book based around a communist Superman, but even putting aside this 9th grade level appreciation of Animal Farm and assuming you would have enough knowledge to write a Soviet Superman story, surely Millar, a citizen of Scotland and the UK, would know what capitalism is. No, of course he doesn't. This book is bad and you know he doesn't. Admittedly, we don't spend too much time in Lex Luthor's USA in this universe. We don't see the plight of the common worker. We don't see starvation. We don't see homelessness. We only focus on Lex, Lois, and to a certain extent, Jimmy Olsen. But the telling moment that he has no idea what capitalism is when Luthor wins the presidency and he controls every dollar within the market. That's a planned economy. That is what the Soviet system had. This world that Luthor also created has full employment and eliminated homelessness and eventually leads to a one-world government of scholars and artists and scientists. These are not things that capitalism can create. I'm not going to go into the depths of capitalism, but just for the very, very, very basics of this video, I'm just going to give why this cannot happen. This is capitalism just for the bare bones of it. Someone either owns means of production or a property privately. If someone is on property, they are renting it and giving value to the owner. The owner isn't doing any work, they just own the property. Therefore, they are extracting value that they did not create from somebody else. If they own means of production, they hire people so that they can work the means of production and pay them less than what they create, taking those profits for themselves, which means they have to pay them less than what they create. This is also exploitation. Now, to keep costs down when you own the means of production, for a worker, if they ask for too much money or they start to cost too much, you can get rid of them and pull from a pool of people who want to work. That pool is essential because you have a whole bunch of people who are willing to work for less so they can survive. If this person costs too much, then you can get rid of them. That is the unemployment population. This is what gives capitalism its profit margins in the means of production. Now, this isn't even a judgment call, even though obviously I disagree with this. This is just the functions of capitalism. Even if you are pro-capitalism, that's an undeniable fact. So why am I going through the rudimentary actions of capitalism? Well, if someone is fired for costing too much, or you're unemployed in the first place, to have full employment, you need someone to guaranteed hire you. This could be the government, a commune, whatever, but capitalism will do everything to fight against having that pool eliminated so that they can treat their workers as bad as they do. My proof for this is that we live in capitalism and we haven't eliminated unemployment, which you think they would have done by now if they wanted to. So full employment is literally impossible under capitalism. Now, theoretically, homelessness could be eliminated under capitalism, and in certain social democracies it has, but that requires a very strong welfare state that taxes the corporations very highly. In America, this has not been the case for a long time, and it would require drastic change that the corporations would be okay with. Which means that this is probably pretty unlikely as well. That's also not to mention in a global economy where most countries are communist, the USA would have to adopt extremely different trade procedures. But no, these systems don't really come up that much, and they're kind of immaterial to Mark, who just sees them as countries. Now, was I expecting an economic and political masterpiece? No. But if you're going to write a communist Superman story, it's not a ridiculous request to ask that you at least have a basic understanding of each of these systems? One of these systems? Mark, can you give me one? Neither? Oh. Okay. Speaking of more systems that Mark has no fucking clue about.
Anarchy in Black.
Oops, my anarchy symbol.
Full disclosure here. I fucking love the Batman Ushanka. It's goddamn amazing, and the most flawless part of this book. Batman in this story is presented by Superman point blank as anarchy in black. You know what's a good conversation? Marxism-Leninism versus anarcho-communism. You know who's way out of their fucking depths in this conversation?
This Superman
Mark
story?
Millar. I actually like Batman being in the story because, well, it's an Elseworlds, first of all, so Batman's gonna show up. And second of all, it's kind of a neat foil to the usual DC Universe stuff that goes on. Like, Superman usually doesn't work with governments or police forces, and he just kind of does his own thing. Meanwhile, Batman works with the police all the time. So I think it's a nice foil and kind of turn it around as like Superman's with the state this time and Batman is against it. Please stop calling Batman a fascist. He is not a fucking fascist, for the love of God. So what does this Batman want? Well, he wants Superman out of power. And he works with the CIA. He even has an American flag in his Batcave. Other than that, nothing. Not really. He just doesn't like authoritarianism, which is the most bland ideology you could ever give him. Batman's introduction to the story is his parents are gunned down by the secret police. Actually, they're gunned down by Pyotr Roslov. Beyond that, he despises Superman, the figurehead of the system that did this to his parents. So these two things that happen are life-altering events to him, and he goes underground in the USSR. And one of the famous anti-USSR statements was from anarchists, and anarchism is a viable path for this character. But nope, he works with the USA, the CIA, and even Pyotr Roslov, the person who murdered his parents, to fight against this nebulous communism that Millar presents us. So why would this supposedly freedom-loving Batman work with the USA? When I first read this book, the first comic I ever read, I didn't have the political framework or the background in world history that I do now. But does anyone notice how weirdly pro-imperialism this comic is?
We must recognize communism for what it is. Mr. Khrushchev understands only strength. Our next president must show clearly that America won't stand for being pushed around anywhere in the world.
Luthor's first plan for combating Superman starts off by downing a Soviet satellite over Metropolis, potentially murdering millions of people. And he does this just to destabilize the USSR. He then takes DNA from the satellite to create a US duplicate of Superman, this universe's Bizarro. I actually like this concept because it shows about the superhuman arms race that would actually take place if the USSR got a Superman. The US would want one too, and they would do near anything to get it, so that's not bad by itself. But after the Soviet Superman confronts Bizarro, who is intruding on his space, the US launches a missile by accident which crashes into London, killing 238 people. And then a second later, he says the body count triples because of a US missile. This action actually has zero consequences for the USA, and in fact, the Soviet Superman was trying to save people, and even he said that the Soviet Union didn't pose a threat to the UK. In issue 2, it is revealed that the CIA has been trying to assassinate Superman for decades, which is justified because he's a bad guy. The CIA also funds anarchist Batman, who doesn't kill Superman, even though the CIA funded him to do exactly that. And the reason he doesn't is because of his own principles. In issue 3, the backstory of this universe's Hal Jordan, who is the Green Lantern, is that he was shot down in his plane over Malaysia in 1983 after it's explicitly said that the US was trying to drive out communists. Remember, Superman said that every country that joined the Warsaw Pact did so out of its own free will. So the US is in Malaysia in 1983, driving out the communists, when Malaysia would have joined willingly. And the US is justified in this? It's never brought up again. The USA killed hundreds of people in London. The USA was willing to kill millions of its own civilians. The USA was in Malaysia in 1983 after the country willingly joined the communists. The USA was willing to murder world leaders that opposed it. Oh, come on, guys. Superman is bad because he's authoritarian and communist and an alien. Not like Lex Luthor, who's an authoritarian, a capitalist, and an American.
Laughing time is over.
I have a confession to make. There is only one reason why I made this video. You know, for the longest time, I enjoyed Red Sun. I thought the concept was amazing. I still think the concept's amazing. I liked the art. The faces are really well done. And there's a couple good lines of dialogue that I genuinely enjoy. And I actually like Hal Jordan's backstory. It really shows the willpower of the man. But this one thing. In the beginning of the climax, each side of the world commences its preparations for war. By Brainiac's estimations, the best case scenario is 6.5 million people dead. The USA will destroy this imperfect utopia and plunge the world into chaos, and it can be stopped if Superman invades the USA before they have a chance. The stakes could never be higher. Before that happens, Lex breaks into the Fortress of Solitude. He tells Superman that the assault is just supplementary to his real plan, to battle him in a game of wits, with their minds alone. Lex has been shown repeatedly throughout this storyline to favor chess. He plays it in every issue, and the metaphor, while a little too obvious, does its job well enough. So here we are. The last issue of a series built on communism versus capitalism, with the figurative head of each system ready to do battle in the marketplace of ideas.
Let the battle of ideas happen.
And then, Brainiac literally steals that conversation from us, and they begin the most unsatisfying beat-em-up in existence. This is the cardinal sin of Red Sun. We are presented with a deeply interesting concept. A world of authoritarianism, power, capitalism versus communism, world politics, the Cold War, imperialism. All of this takes place in this story, and a chess game has been teased since the first issue. All of the flaws, I could have forgiven all of it if we were given not a fist fight, but an intellectual discussion. And the conversation is literally stolen from us. But instead, this chess game is replaced with a single piece of paper in Lois Lane's pocket.
Why don't you just put the whole world in a bottle, Superman?
But he didn't. Now, the violation of brainwashing your citizens is undeniable, and it's horrible. If all of the countries of the world, except for Chile and the USA, have agreed to willingly join the communist system, he didn't put them in a bottle. They joined up willingly. This paper, which is just so flawed, convinces Superman to take a self-destructing Brainiac into space, saving the world, damning himself, and his last words are, "Well played, old friend." Are you fucking kidding me? That is why Red Sun is bad. Because it is politically and thematically illiterate. These ideas are picked up and discarded on a whim. If it is pro-US imperialism and hegemony, it is kept, and if the next moment it is contradicted, it is thrown away and picked up for another one. As long as it is against this nebulous communism, it is good, and that's all that matters. Now, I'm not naive. I wasn't expecting a pro-communist comic from one of the two biggest comic publishers in the world. The market would never allow that. But what we could have gotten with Red Sun is a comic that examines the systems in which dictate our lives, the pros, the cons, the philosophical arguments that it poses, the questions it raises, and it could have examined them. It didn't need to give an answer, or it could have given an answer that I wouldn't be okay with, but it could have posed these questions. Instead, the questions it poses are contradicted by itself, they're flawed to start with, and there's nothing to be said of value here. But it could have been done so much better. The ending could have been the Green Lantern Corps and the Amazons fighting Brainiac, these armies of the world fighting each other in the background, while in the foreground we have these two titans sitting down for a debate and a chess match. These two massive figureheads with intellect to match, playing a game, using everything at their disposal to prove themselves right. And it could have been so much more satisfying. Is it right to force your way of life onto somebody? Which way of life are you willing to force onto somebody? Is it right to eliminate freedom of speech if it guarantees a right to life? These are the questions that could have been asked of the reader. Instead, what we get is an unsatisfying beat-em-up that Superman cuts through like butter. And then the ending ignores all of the questions that were raised. So if you're like me and you want a nuanced discussion of capitalism versus Marxism, with a healthy dose of Superman, just read literally any other Superman comic. He's a working-class journalist immigrant whose arch nemesis is a bloodthirsty billionaire. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. I really was working on it for a long time, so I'm glad it got out there. And Red Sun is really a work that I don't love to hate it, because I feel like it could have been so much better. But if you appreciated this video, just give it a like and a thumbs up and a subscribe and a ring the bell if you want. But my video output's still gonna not be too high. I appreciate you watching it till this part. Follow me on Instagram. Oh, hey, Nala. I don't have a Patreon, but you know, if I get enough people subscribing, maybe I'll hit that eventually. In the meantime, though, follow me on my social media accounts. I am at UCotScott. I've got more videos over one of these places. I still don't know whatever, but it'll be this area here. Thanks again. This really did take a long time, and this audio file is like over 2 hours long, so I know it's going to be a long one.